Wait, that's your fiancé.
Please don't do this here.
I sold everything to send you abroad. Look at me. Am I a stranger now?
It's not what you think.
I gave you my future and you came back with another woman. You used my sacrifice to build your life. You will not get away with this, I promise you.
What if I told you that the person you sacrificed everything for could stand in front of you, look you in the eyes, and pretend you were a stranger? That is exactly what happened to me. My name is Evelyn, and the story I'm about to tell you is not from a film. It is not something I read in a book. It happened to me in this very neighborhood on a dusty afternoon that started like any other until it didn't. I remember standing by the gate of Mama Chisom's compound, holding a small bunch of ube I had just bought from the market. The street was loud. People were laughing, ululating, banging pots and drums like it was New Year. Children were running around with their wrappers half-tied. Women were spraying perfume into the air. Men were already cracking open bottles of star beer before noon. Everyone had gathered because Tunde was coming home. My Tunde, the man I had loved since I was 19 years old, the man whose university fees I had paid with my own blood, the man who used to press his forehead against mine in the darkness of my small room and whisper, "Evelyn, you are the only reason I believe tomorrow is possible." I had ironed my best dress that morning, a soft yellow Ankara with gold embroidery along the neck. I had plaited my hair neatly. I had even bought new slippers, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted to look worthy of the moment. This was the day I had been waiting for. 6 years of sacrifice, 6 years of silence, 6 years of choosing him over myself, and finally, the reward was coming home. I could hear the crowd shifting near the junction. A black Toyota Camry was turning slowly into the street. Women screamed. Children ran after the car. My heart was hammering. My palms were wet. I was smiling so wide my cheeks were beginning to ache. The car stopped. The door opened. Tunde stepped out. He was taller than I remembered. His skin was smoother. His clothes were sharp. A fitted white shirt tucked into dark trousers. He had the kind of calm confidence that only comes when the world has been good to you. He waved at the crowd, laughing, accepting handshakes and hugs like a returning king. And then the other door opened. A woman stepped out. She was light-skinned, tall, with straight dark hair that fell past her shoulders. She wore a cream-colored dress and small diamond earrings. She smiled at the crowd with the gentle, patient smile of someone who does not quite understand the language around her, but knows she's being celebrated. Tunde put his arm around her waist. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is Isabella, my fiancée." The ube I was holding fell from my hand. I did not hear the rest of what he said. There was a ringing in my ears, a sharp, breathless silence that swallowed the noise of the crowd. My legs were still standing, my body was still upright, but something inside me had already hit the floor. I stood there, invisible, in the middle of a street full of people celebrating the man I had built. And the worst was still coming. You cannot understand what that moment cost me unless you understand where I came from. Tunde and I grew up on the same street in Ajegule. Not the kind of neighborhood people describe with fondness, no. This was the kind of place where gutters overflowed after every rain, where the sound of generators was a luxury, where children shared textbooks and nobody spoke too loudly about their dreams, because dreams felt dangerous in a place like that. I was the only child of my mother, a woman named Grace, who sold boiled groundnuts and cold water by the bus stop every single day of her life. She was not educated, she had never traveled beyond Lagos, but she had a fierceness in her that I carry in my chest to this day. My mother passed away when I was 17. She left behind 3 things: a small rented room, a battered wooden box, and inside that box had jewelry. A Fian gold chain, a pair of gold earrings, a bracelet that her own mother had given her. She told me before she passed, "Evelyn, this is not for spending. This is your anchor. When life shakes you, hold this and remember who you come from." I held on to those words and I held on to the box. Then I met Tunde. He lived 3 houses down from us. His family was just as poor, maybe even poorer. His father had left when he was 8. His mother sold akara by the roadside. But Tunde had something I had never seen in someone so young: a hunger. Not the hunger of an empty stomach, but the hunger of a mind that wanted more than what the street had offered. He was brilliant. Everyone knew it. His teachers talked about him. His results were extraordinary. When he finished secondary school with distinctions in nearly every subject, people in the neighborhood gathered and said, "That boy is going to be somebody." He applied for an international scholarship. He did not get it. He applied again. He did not get it. The 3rd time something came, not a full scholarship, but a partial admission to a decent university abroad. The school would cover part of the tuition, but the rest, the balance of the fees, the accommodation, the feeding, the books, the flights, that was our problem. Tunde came to me with the letter. His hands were shaking. His eyes were red, the way they got when he was trying very hard not to cry. He said, "Evelyn, I don't know what to do. I can't let this go." And I looked at that letter, and I looked at him, and something inside me made a decision before my mouth even opened. I said, "We will find the money. I promise you, we will find it." I said it like I already had a plan. I didn't, but I was going to build one. I want you to understand exactly what I mean when I say I gave everything. I do not mean I helped a little. I do not mean I contributed. I mean I dismantled my own future and handed it to him piece by piece. The first thing I did was sell my mother's jewelry. I remember the morning I opened that wooden box. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just holding the bracelet. It still smelled faintly of her, a mixture of shea butter and something I could never name but always recognized. I pressed it to my nose and I told myself, Mama would understand. Mama always wanted me to be loved well. I sold everything in that box to a goldsmith near Balagum Market. He counted the notes slowly and placed them in my hand with a carelessness that made me want to snatch them back, but I didn't. I took 3 jobs. During the day, I braided hair in a salon on Lagos Island. In the evenings, I sold roasted plantain near a filling station close to our street. On weekends, I washed and pressed clothes for a woman who had a boutique in Surulere. My hands cracked in the dry harmattan. My back ached every night. I ate once a day sometimes, twice if I was lucky, and I told no one. Then the university admission came. A good one, University of Lagos, accounting department. I had applied months before, and somehow, in all the noise of preparing Tunde for his journey, I had almost forgotten. I sat with that letter for 3 days. I calculated. I looked at the numbers. Between Tunde's next school fees, his rent renewal, and the money I was sending for his living expenses, there was nothing left for my own tuition. I told myself I would defer. Just 1 year. That 1 year became 6. Every month I transferred money. Whenever Tunde called and said his account was running low, I would cut something else for my own life, food, transport, sleep, and find a way to send what he needed. Whenever he was struggling with a course and wanted to drop out, I would stay on the phone with him until past midnight, talking him back from the edge. You are too close to stop, Tunde. You did not come this far to come this far. He would go quiet, and then he would say, "What would I do without you, Evelyn?" I believed him. People in the neighborhood used to tell me I was foolish. They said, "You are giving your blood to someone else's future while yours is drying up." My auntie came to me once and grabbed my arm and said, "Evelyn, I have seen this story before. It does not end the way you think." I told her she did not understand real love. I was so sure I knew something the rest of them didn't. If you are watching this right now and you have ever poured yourself into someone who made you feel like the sacrifice was worth it, stay with me because this story is for you. Subscribe to Reina Tales so you don't miss how this ends. But the signs were there, I just refused to read them. His calls began to space out. Once a week became once a month. His messages became shorter. When I asked how he was doing, he would say, "Fine, busy, we'll call you later." Later rarely came. When I asked if everything was okay between us, he would laugh lightly and say, "Evelyn, why are you always overthinking?" I told myself it was the distance, the stress of studies, the pressure of a different country. I covered for him in my own mind more times than I can count. And then one day, after years of silence growing louder between us, he called me himself. "Evelyn," he said, and his voice had something different in it, a formality I had never heard before. "I'm coming home next month. There is something important I want everyone to know." My heart soared. I thought he was finally coming back to choose me properly in front of everyone. I started preparing. I should have been running. The crowd was still cheering when it happened. Tunde had finished receiving hugs and handshakes from the men near the gate. He was walking slowly down the street now, Isabella by his side, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. She was looking around the neighborhood with soft, curious eyes, taking everything in. I could tell she was trying to be warm. She did not know what she had walked into. And then Tunde saw me. Our eyes met. For 1 second, 1 single second, something passed over his face. I could not name it. It was not guilt exactly. It was more like the quick flash of a man who has rehearsed a difficult scene and is now stepping into it. He walked towards me. I waited. My chest was tight, but I held my ground. I would not embarrass him. I would not cause a scene. I told myself I would just wait for him to pull me aside and explain. There had to be an explanation. He stopped in front of me. He smiled, the same smile, the one I had loved for years. He said, "Evelyn, you are here. How have you been? Isabella, this is Evelyn. She is practically family around here. She helped us out a few times when things were rough. A very kind woman." The world tilted. A very kind woman. A few times helped us out. I stood there and felt something inside me begin to crack, not loudly, not with a sob or a shout, but slowly, the way a wall cracks when the foundation beneath it shifts. He was looking at me like a neighbor, a friendly face from the past, someone mildly worth acknowledging. I smiled at Isabella. I said, "Lovely to meet you too," and I walked away. I walked until I turned the corner, and then I leaned against the wall of a stranger's fence, pressed my back flat against the concrete, and stood there until I was sure I wasn't going to collapse. I had given him my mother's gold. I had given him my education. I had given him 6 years of my youth, and he had returned the favor by making me invisible. But I was not finished, and neither was the truth. The months that followed were the quietest and the hardest of my life. Tunde and Isabella rented a flat in a nicer part of Lagos, far from Ajegunle, far from the life he had started in. He was now working at a consulting firm, building a career on the degree I had funded. People who didn't know the full story called him a success. They said he was an inspiration, a boy from nothing who had made something of himself. I watched it all from a distance and said nothing. Not because I was afraid, but because I had learned something about pain. It does not need your permission to work. It moves on its own schedule. I went back to braiding hair. I enrolled in a part-time business program at a private institute nearby. Nothing as grand as University of Lagos, but it was something, and it was mine. I paid for it myself, every kobo. I started saving properly for the first time. I started sleeping through the night again. People around me expected me to fall apart. Some of them even seemed to be waiting for it. The aunties who had warned me, the neighbors who had seen everything. They would look at me with that specific kind of pity that edges towards satisfaction. The kind that says, "We told you so," without needing to open a mouth. I gave them nothing. But across town, things were beginning to move. Isabella was not the kind of woman who decorated her life with ignorance. She was sharp. She had built her family's business interests across 3 countries. She did not miss details. And she had been noticing things, small inconsistencies in Tunde's stories, a name that came up too often in old conversations he had deleted too thoroughly, money transfers on old bank statements he had not known she could access. She was not suspicious by nature, but she was thorough. It began with an old email she found in a recovered folder on his laptop, one he thought he had deleted. It was a message from me, dated 4 years back, with a transfer receipt attached. She read it once, then she read it again. Then she started to search. She found receipts, money sent in consistent amounts over years. She found screenshots of conversations where Tunde had told me he loved me, promised me a future, called him his foundation. She found a photo I had sent him once of my mother's jewelry box the day before I sold it, with a message that said, "I am sending you something precious so you can build something precious. Don't waste it." She found the university deferral letter I had scanned and sent him, the one where I explained that I was pushing back my own education to ensure he had everything he needed for the semester. She read all of it, and then she confronted him. I heard about it the way news travels in Lagos, not through phone calls, but through the layered network of people who know people, who live near people, who tell other people. It happened at a dinner they were hosting for colleagues and family, the kind of event Tunde had started throwing to build his new image, to present himself as the polished man who had made it. Isabella had sat quietly through the beginning of the evening, smiling, pouring drinks, being the gracious fiancée. And then, in front of everyone, she placed a printed stack of documents on the dining table. She said, calmly, in that soft, precise voice of hers, "Before we eat, I think everyone here should know the true story of how Tunde Adeyemi got his degree." The room went still. She went through it piece by piece, the receipts, the emails, the scanned university letter, the photo of the jewelry box. She read one of his old messages to me aloud, the one where he had written, "Evelyn, I swear on everything, when I come back, I am going to give you the life you deserve. You are not just my girlfriend, you are the reason I am still standing." She put the paper down. She said, "He came back. He just decided she deserved nothing." Then she removed her engagement ring, placed it on the table beside the documents, picked up her bag, and walked out of her own dinner. What followed was not quiet. The story spread the way fire spreads in dry season, fast, hungry, unstoppable. Someone who had been at the dinner told someone else. By the next morning, it was on 2 WhatsApp groups. By evening, it had reached people who had not been near Ajegunle in 10 years. Within a week, Tunde's name had become a sentence people finished with a hiss. His firm placed him on administrative review pending what they called a review of personal conduct and public representation. 2 clients withdrew from projects. His mentor, a man he had proudly name-dropped in every interview, released a brief and devastating public statement, saying only that he was deeply disappointed. Isabella flew home to her family. She did not look back. Tunde came to find me. He came to the salon where I was braiding hair, wearing the same clothes he had been wearing 2 days before, eyes hollow, pride finally stripped from him by the weight of what he had done. He stood at the door and said my name. I looked up. I looked at him the way you look at something that used to mean everything and now means nothing more than a lesson you survived. He said, "Evelyn, I am sorry. I panicked. I was afraid she would leave me if she knew. I made the worst decision of my life and I'm asking you to..." I said, "To what, Tunde? Forgive you again? Cover for you again? I already spent 6 years being your backup plan. I am not interested in being your apology." He stood there. I turned back to the hair in my hands. He left. 3 months later, I completed my business program. I used the connections I had built quietly over the years to register a small natural hair product line. It grew slowly, then quickly. I hired my first staff member within the year. I moved out of Ajegunle not because I was running, but because I had earned the right to something bigger. The neighborhood that had watched me sacrifice and stay silent finally watched me rise. And here is what I want to leave with you. The thing I wish someone had told me when I was 19 and in love and willing to sell my mother's jewelry for a man's dream. Your sacrifice is sacred. It should never be spent on someone who would deny it ever happened. The person worthy of your investment is someone who would carry your name with honor even when there is nothing left to gain from doing so. Real love does not erase you when it becomes convenient. Real love builds with you, not on top of you. Tunde lost everything he had tried to build on a broken foundation. Isabella walked away with her dignity. And me? I finally got back to myself. And this time, nobody was taking that from me.